All right, 40, that's good enough for me. People still filing in because they know the fun stuff happens at the end of these calls. Once again, hello, everybody. Welcome to the Northbeam Media Buyer webinar. My name is Brian. I'm your host here every Monday. We're going to dive into the data, give you quick insights, tips, tricks, and guidance for what happened last week. With us today, we have Cody from Jones Road Beauty. Thank you so much. I'm sure you all know him. He's the man, the myth, the legend is here. We're going to talk a little bit about Q4. We're going to talk about Q4. We're going to talk about what to do if your business is in a downturn or having a hard time, which we all experience from time to time. And we're going to get into it. So first, let's talk the data. So this is holiday weekend, right? This is July 4 coverage, right? Which typically is a tough e-commerce selling day, unless you have something that's really contextually relevant. And so what we see from this, of course, is the cost per clicks are down big time. CPMs are down big time because most people pull their spend, which totally makes sense. It makes sense, right? I would consider a lot of these green arrows as a bit of a fallacy, because if you've been watching the last couple of weeks, you know we're in a pretty hard downturn. Costs are generally high, and this little bounce at the bottom over this holiday weekend is not something I would be accounting for if you were running experiments or something like that through that day, right? There might just be a little bit more space for you to fit your CPMs. Your CPMs are down. Maybe more people were engaged with purchasing because it's storming all over the East Coast. The last week or so, a lot of people inside purchasing. So generally, a lot of these green arrows for me are just a circumstance of essentially the 4th of July contextual brands capitalizing as they do every year. They're pros at this, the people who are running 4th of July sales for, you name it, Yeti coolers, umbrellas, sunglasses, that sort of jam, right? So seeing things like, CAC being down 10% on Meta is not something that I would take back to your brand unless you were running a very, very specific 4th of July holiday, event, which is pretty niche. What is interesting is we've now hit our highest budget share for Meta that I've seen since I started running this platform. And part of that to me feels like when performance gets bad, when top of funnel performance gets bad, or, we enter a time of anti-seasonality, negative seasonality, a lot of brands will just consolidate to their conversion campaigns. This happens all the time. It's a fallacy, right? You're pulling from your top of funnel to feed your bottom funnel, and eventually your bottom funnel dries up. Meta is one of the places where people kind of hedge their bets and consolidate their money. I'd be surprised to see if it stays at 69% here, as long as it does. Normally we're hovering around 67 or even lower, down to 65, with more ad spend spread around some of the other platforms. So we'll see if that happens. Not too many major shifts on Google, which is to be expected. Looking at industries, this is what really caught my eye this week, because I had to check this like 5 or 6 times to make sure this data was right. A lot of brands last week saw improvements, right, on their daily revenue, on their daily new customers. However, I'm going to guess, and I can't go in and check every single brand. I can't go in and, I don't have a Rolodex of every single 4th of July discount code that ever ran, right? But I'm willing to bet that a lot of these brands ran holiday promos at the cost of their margin, right? So you view it as an accessories brand, maybe. And I did go and check, and there's 1 or 2 that ran extremely aggressive discounts this time. Your daily revenue was up 23%, or your daily new customers was up 17% off the previous week. That's not saying much coming from that previous week. 2 weeks ago, bad week for us, right? So it's not saying much. And then 2, running 50, 60% discounts, holiday discounts, 35%, whatever you might be running, looks great, and it does drive conversion, right? But you're just losing margin on that. And at the same time, we know over and over, because you hear me say it like a broken record a million times on this call, that customers acquired at a discount typically have lower LTV than anybody else. If you see that differently in your own brand, I'm very, very happy for you. Keep discounting. If you are like the 99% of us that anytime you run a discount, it's somebody who's like, I didn't really want it, but now it's so cheap, maybe I'll buy it, is usually the outcome. And those customers don't really pay out for me in the long run. And I think a lot about that. So lots of green arrows here, but I don't want you feeling FOMO about this and being like, hey, man, everybody else did so good. Why didn't we do that good? Let's go back and yank all our ad spend. Let's go back and be really reactive and really knee jerky, right? Not about it. Not about it. This is a great time for you to focus on your own data, focus on your own performance. Think about, all right, we're stepping into the dog days of e-commerce summer here, right? Everybody's outside, they're with their friends, family, having a good time, catching a tan, drinking too much. What they're not doing is buying things. We're not at back to school yet. We're not even thinking about Q4 yet, which we're going to get to here at the end of this call. This is a great time for you to be planning, strategizing, running creative tests in the most brutal environment, because you literally would be if you're running creative tests now, right? Anything that would perform now would probably do great for you later in the year. And this is not something that is easy for any of us to navigate, but you're going to have bad times in your business. It's going to happen this time of the year. That means if you're having conversations with your agencies, with your marketing teams, I would be having conversations about like, okay, well, how are we going to get through this in an efficient way? How are we not going to waste money at this time? I understand that we're not necessarily going to have great week over week growth forever, right? I understand many of our brands, many of us rely on heavy seasonality shifts. Can we put another peak in here? Can we add another tent pole maybe sometime in midsummer that is actually contextually relevant, what actually drives sales? Do we even need that? Maybe we just shrink everything down and we just fast our business through this time and then spam everything up towards the end of Q3 and going into Q4, right? Like, this is a great time to sit back, not react to all the green areas you see on this chart or all the red areas you might see in your own chart, and think about, okay, what strategically makes sense for our business and our marketing next? Is this a great time for us to maybe lay off a lot of our intense week over week work so that we can do some long-term prep, right? Like, all sorts of stuff you can be doing at this time. Great things to think about. And a perfect segue into today's guest. Cody, thank you so much for being here today, man.
Man, thanks for having me. I'm excited.
You're
honored
like
to be here.
A legend in the e-commerce space. You're all over the place. People are always checking on your Twitter. They're talking a lot about, the work that you're doing. You're very real in everything that you post. And of course, Jones Road is a fantastic case study for not only Northbeam, self-plug, but I really like your strategy. I like what you do. I like the way that you approach social. And just the many times that we've talked, I've always been a fan of the way that you conceptualize how you approach your business. So I just spent this whole webinar talking about, how everybody's probably having a tough time. What is your advice as someone who's now been with Jones Road for a long time? You've seen it all. I don't know how many different seasonality experiences you've had. As somebody who's seen it all, what are you thinking when you're in times of, a downturn or reduced consumer spending or reduced purchasing behavior? Like, what are you thinking about in those times, and what are you doing at Jones Road?
Yeah, man. First of all, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here. Thank you for the kind words. Don't deserve them, but I appreciate it nonetheless. I think, like, the emotional side of me, like, I hate it. Like, June is always our worst month. Like, on one hand, I just want to enjoy the summer and whatnot. On the other hand, I just can't wait for the summer to be over, because like we ramp back up again in like September and stuff. But I think, like, I can't wait for Q4. Like, it's just like every part of me that cares about business and growth, I just can't wait. But so now is definitely the time, and kind of what I try to communicate to my team is like, this is the time to really be thinking and focusing on it, and just we keep doing what we're doing. We don't change our strategy just because, we might not be having week over week or month over month growth, and we're going to continue doing the same thing and staying the course. And I think it's really helpful if you have historical data for your brand. Hopefully you have, an easy way to access that, and you can kind of understand. And I will say, I'm usually not a very big fan of comparing to last year or something like that, especially if you're a fast growing brand. I prefer, we do all of our reporting on forecasts. So we will do a cohort based forecast and have all of our main, blended KPIs based on that. Because, if you're trying to double year over year or something like that. That being said, the one time that I feel like is really helpful to look at your year over year forecasts is in these slow periods, really just to give you some perspective, I think, to know, hey, maybe we're 20-30% down from our peak, our prior big month of like May, right? We came off a really strong Memorial Day promo or something like that. So yes, we're 30% down, but it doesn't mean we're any worse of a business. We're actually 60% up from last June. So that's kind of how I look at it, is really having your numbers and build into it. Like, if you have any seasonal data, 2 to 3 years of it, you shouldn't be overly optimistic with your forecast, and you really need to build some diminished volume and efficiency into these kind of dog days of summer months. So like, for example, we might want to run MER at like a 5 year round, but I'm totally going to forecast it below that. June is going to be, let's just throw out some numbers, 4.5, 4.75 this month. And that kind of builds it in, and it kind of tells me like, hey, we're going according to plan, even though I don't really love the numbers, even though this is not necessarily indicative of what I actually want. Right now, we are going according to plan, and if we just stick to it, we're gonna, pull back spending. Again, we can talk about if you're not going according to plan, what do we do? How do you adjust? Like, happy to talk about that. But that's kind of overall how I'm approaching this period.
If I could make like a Northbeam school of business, this is like the stuff you're talking about is critical as part of it, right? Like, so often, I mean, I've fallen for this through my marketing career. I've lacked a lot of what you said when you mentioned perspective, right? Like, I think there's a lot of expectation for massive highfalutin returns, like week over week, no matter what, or we're always
Sure.
looking at year over year, right? And like, what I really like about Northbeam that I don't think it's said enough is the fact that, yeah, it doesn't necessarily simplify because there is like tons of results and tons of data, but as marketers who using data, we have to look at every perspective, right? And we can accept the fact that maybe we are definitely going to have a worse June, right? But that's critical as part of our business cycle, and that perspective, and being like, okay, well, what other levers can we pull through this time that are maybe useful for us? Maybe it's a great time for us to do inventory at the warehouse or something, right? Like stuff like that, that's like really useful. I worked a warehouse job years and years ago in high school, and we had 1 week of the year that was always horrible for our business. I could not tell you why. I can't even remember. And that was the week we always did inventory. And it strikes me now, it comes up in this call because it's like, oh yeah, we all have free hands. It's a perfect time. Like, no one's working. We're filling barely a fifth as many orders as we usually do, because all the companies that purchase from us are on some kind of shared time off. It's a perfect time to pull another lever, right? Which is to understand, clean up our warehouse, improve efficiencies. And we just do it every year, and it was fantastic. So what you're mentioning, like keeping perspective, thinking about, okay, not comparing to year over year, and instead forecasting and sticking to that, which is another fantastic business plan of like, oh, let's set goals instead of just assuming that we need to beat targets every single year. Like, let's set goals and like measure ourselves against them, right? Like simple OKR setting. Like, all this stuff is I think indicative of the kind of businesses that are going to succeed in the future. And that being said, I would love to talk about great things to do if your marketing is in a downturn. So we talk, like, businesses can do lots of different things, but you talked about efficiencies, you talked about scaling things back, and the stress you experience like through downturns. What sort of things do you do when things are not going well, either for unexpected reasons or for expected reasons?
Great question. So I think here's how kind of we look at, forecasting and attribution. We have like an AMER target. So, I don't know if everyone's aware, but like that's acquisition media efficiency ratio. So I always mess up the order, but it's essentially revenue from new customers divided by ad spend. So it's just like blended efficiency of your ads. It's like our primary KPI. You also look at like a blended CAC, and that'll really tell us, how we should be managing our spend. We want to maximize our contribution margin. We want to maximize our volume at the right efficiency. And so it'll really tell us based on that. You don't really want to go off MER too much, especially if you have a good chunk of returning, because that can kind of mask like really strong returning revenue for whatever reason. Maybe you have a product launch or something like that. It can really affect, or just a really strong email can kind of mask poor acquisition efficiency. And you really want to make sure you're always acquiring new customers. So that's kind of ours. And let's say we're good, like we're actually more efficient than we want, we will find opportunities to bump that budget. We will then go into Northbeam, see, what's overperforming. Maybe TikTok is doing better than Meta. We might allocate some spend. Maybe it's, we do everything a little bit evenly. Maybe Meta, that's our main channel. We're probably currently 70% of spend there. So it's often that's where we'll go look to what campaigns can we kind of bump some spend to. But that's the good case. So let's say you're under your targets, right? usually then you're going to pull back on spend. That's kind of the most commonly, if you run cost caps, it'll happen naturally, but you can kind of adjust your caps. We do lowest cost, everything. So you likely want to pull back on spend. Again, you just want to see, and compare directionally. That's one thing I love about Northbeam is you're not getting these different optimization targets and windows on different platforms. You can kind of compare directionally. Now, knowing like, you're not going to look at the same target per channel. I shouldn't have the same 1-day click goal. We use 1-day click for everything. I shouldn't have the same 1-day click goal on a bottom of funnel Google branded search as I do on a YouTube top of funnel. So we're kind of looking at all of those as separate things, but using 1-day click and having different like multipliers. So I might need like a 1 on TikTok, a 1.3 on Meta, a 0.4 on YouTube, just depending on where something might fit in the funnel. But I'm going to kind of see, and I know my historical benchmarks or norms, and I'm going to see what's performing well, what's not. And I want to do everything I can to, build volume, but we've got to be profitable. We're bootstrapped. We've got to figure out, what's good spend and what's bad spend. And even if we are, our constraint is efficiency, meaning I would rather hit our efficiency targets and get less volume. So don't hit our overall revenue forecast, but hit our profitability forecast. That's our goal. So that's kind of my constraint. If you have strict growth targets that you need to hit, and you're going to prioritize those over efficiency targets, that's fine. Just understand the pros and cons of each scenario. The one con of the scenario of not really understanding of kind of being efficiency focused is, what time period are you trying to be efficiency focused for, and understand that you might have to acquire customers. I don't want to say at a loss, but you might have to run slightly worse efficiencies during these slower periods, knowing that these customers that you either acquire now, or maybe you don't acquire them, but you build awareness and build top of funnel, are then going to purchase when you have seasonal events in late Q3 and Q4. So I'm willing to run it at a little bit worse of an efficiency now, because I'm probably going to make up for that later on.
I cannot stress enough how many brands that I've worked with or spoken to who, to your last point, are trying to cram in seasonality time when really the magic happens prior to that, right? Like the awareness setting, all of that, just getting in their ears, getting their attention, building that brand awareness happens quarters ahead of time, right? And I love that.
And it's something I have to tell myself. Sorry to cut you off, but it's something like I have to remind myself of, because I want to, like you said earlier, like I want to cut budget from top of funnel. Like our YouTube performance looks terrible right now. Our overall efficiency is not good, and I do have to, because we haven't raised money, we don't have a crazy long time horizon. I do have to have some goals that I have to hit this month, but I also have to be really cognizant of what you said, which is I got to be thinking about building the funnel for Q4.
And if you have good attribution, you've done the mental models or the literal algebra, right, to help you understand, okay, I know that this is going to be top of funnel, and I'm looking for this signal to happen in Q4. Like if we're going to be spending all this much on YouTube, like awareness campaigns, or like, organic even, right? Could be one of the levers that you use to actually build that audience. Like, oh, all right, we got this much engagement, we got these many followers. I'm expecting now, going back to your forecasting point, is that what you're doing? You're going, I'm expecting now this much lift when I run a seasonal campaign.
Yeah, I don't have as much data. Like we're doing more YouTube. We're testing that. We just launched a Meta upper funnel campaign last week. Like I don't have as much data on that currently yet. We're kind of building it now, but at least theoretically I'm going and I'm trying to build that mental muscle and that discipline of allowing that to spend, even though we might not be seeing the best performance right now.
Sometimes we feel like a stockbroker. I'm like, oh boy, do I want to pull the plug on this? Or, oh man, do I want to put all my chips on that? And really, it's about understanding how all of these different channels work together in tandem. The length of time it takes to get to conversion, talking about your different stages of the funnel. It's a totally different world. And so I love talking to you about it, because I think you're right on the money of the new wave of businesses doing this. And you're not the first person to come on this call and say, this is what I'm doing in my business. It's very, very similar. Like, we had Krish last week come on and tell us, like, he's like, yeah, I'm always doing my awareness like quarters in advance, because he has like a high AOV product, right? It's like a $3,000 ring. And then, the guys from HexCloud are saying the same thing. He's like, dude, I'm running campaigns in February that I know are going to convert in like November, right? Like,
Mhm. Yeah.
there's tons and tons of brands doing this, which is to use my favorite phrase, a great segue into Q4. So I know we just started Q3, folks, but I'm here banging the gong on Q4 planning. I know it's a big deal for most for businesses in this chat. And then right now is a great time to get ready for it, run campaigns for it, get in people's ears about it without giving away all your secret sauce.
Mhm.
What are you looking at in terms of strategies, tactics, channels, things that are interesting for you in Q4?
I think it starts with the offer, of course. Most brands will discount. You can do really whatever you want, but don't. I mean, listen, there's nothing wrong with a very simple 20% off offer. Like that's a great offer. So I don't want to say like complicate it. Feel free to keep it simple, but also put a lot of thought into it because your offer is really going to be the most important thing. We prefer not to discount, so we do some type of exclusive custom thing that we know there's a lot of demand for. Biggest challenge with that is we have to kind of inventory forecast and really be strategic with how much we're getting. So that's a challenge if you're doing some type of gift with purchase or whatever, and then trying to line up your growth strategy kind of to that forecast. It's such a small window that like there's not a lot of margin for error. But I think offer, figure out how much you need to spend to that offer, and then you can create strategies thinking about where you want to be placing that spend, what you want the allocation to be. I think like we were talking about before, I think Meta is the best in the world at finding people who are ready and willing and likely to buy. I think it's your job to get them in that stage. And I think Meta can do that. I'm not saying it can't, but it's maybe half that, half, the other thing. But I think YouTube can be great. I think we're going to ramp up influencer, like a lot of just general top of funnel. We don't do TV yet. If we were a TV brand, hopefully soon we'll be ready to be. I'd probably think about ramping that up, like you said, probably 3 months ahead of time, depending on your seasonality and stuff like that. But we're doing a lot of customer interviews now that our CX team is doing that. Like people will see an ad and like you said, in July and buy in November or even quite longer than that. So we're really trying to kind of, capture that bottom of funnel. I really even think the acquisition that you're going to get there is going to be people who, kind of were holding off. So again, I'm going to be aggressive in my forecast. If I need a 5 MER all month, I'm not going to run out of 5 for the beginning of the month. I'm going to run at a 4, right? Maybe even if maybe under a 4 beginning of the month. And then I know I'm just going to, push it extremely hard and be very efficient, very profitable during those peak periods, and hopefully we kind of even out to like a blended number that we want. But once we start getting into out of September, getting into like August, not only have we planned strategically a lot of our product launches there, we think they'll do better there than in the summer, but we're going to be really aggressive with spend and really try to maximize what we can in that last 4 months of the year.
I would love to dig into the offer piece because I think a lot of us, especially people who've been around and are used to, solving these issues with a media trafficking hack or something like that. I want to dig into why offer is consistently mentioned as like the key thing that drives people through. Like, because if you're doing this awareness work, you'll have a ton of people who will see it and they'll go, great, I love it, and buy it on the spot. But then you'll always have people who have some sort of minor objection.
Yeah.
And that the offer is about, okay, we've got the awareness, they know we exist. This now has crossed some sort of threshold into value or something that like drives them to conversion, right? Is that what you mean when you talk about like fiddling with the offer with
Yeah, definitely. I think it's funny, I bookmarked it, but I saw David Herman tweet about like marketing and sales being one in our industry, and usually they're separate. And it's something I've thought and I've actually written about before. But there is a difference between marketing and sales, and I think a lot of times we'll think about it in terms of top of funnel and not, or brand versus not. But to me, marketing is building desire for your product. And you can have desire for your product without somebody actually pulling out the money to buy it, and sales is pulling out the money to buy it. And I think part of it is sometimes they want it, but there's just not a compelling enough reason for them to act now. And so sometimes you can do that, but offer reigns supreme. It's what do people want? To me, offer is the combination of the product, the price, how you position it, any terms that come with it, even like your return policy as part of your offer, right? Like Domino's did this whole 30 minutes to you or your pizza's free, that's their offer, right? Like that is part of your offer. Try before you buy is part of it. Gift with purchases are great. And so I think that, yeah, part of it is whatever you can do to create some urgency for people to act now, that's great. That might be as simple as a 20% off discount that goes away. That will create some urgency. Otherwise, there's going to be people that are on the fence that are just gonna be like, I don't really need it. Like, there's nothing stopping me from waiting. But the more attractive you can make that, better is. So I love things that are exclusive. So you really get something compelling. Our top offer, we run ads for Miracle Balm. It's like a big beauty product and it's hard to pick their shade. So we do a set of between like 4 and 6 minis of the product where they can get multiple at a decent price, and it takes away a lot of potential buyer's remorse. It's the only time they can get it for the next 6 months. We do it twice a year. I don't know if people know that or not, but it's the only time they can get it. So like, there's this ton of urgency. So all of these people that have seen our ads all year and haven't quite felt confident enough to buy, that's their shot. And so we see just like gigantic days during them. Also love gift with purchases. I mean, the better you can make the gift, the better it is. If it's something people really, really want, you've got an offer if people are buying your offer to do it. Bundles are great. You can be really thoughtful about it. The other reason I love that, just from like an economics perspective, is you can do like a free, like a threshold gift with purchase. Like Hexclad just did this for their July 4th sale, but I think they did like their 13 piece, but you get a free gift over this, this X amount. You can really bump AOV really hard with that, which obviously just helps your contribution margin and stuff like that. So you don't have to get crazy complicated with it. You can still do just a 20%, but put some thought into it for sure.
I mean, it's easy for us to be like, like offer. I'm gonna like copy what I see, right? Offer is a discount, but it's like deeper than that. What you've done with the minis is you identified, the issue here is that people are afraid to make this commitment, financial commitment to the miracle without being sure that they're going to get the right shade. And so you knew that was an existing issue. You were advertising, people know that's the issue that they have. They're like, I don't know. And so you reacted to that, not with like, we're going to do this discount, but you like created this time urgency, like, we're going to offer something now. It's going to solve your issue. And that's what you created the offer around. It's not going out and copying something. It's like you invented this space to make your own offer based off of the feedback you were getting from your own customers. Like, it just makes sense, right? Like, it always drives me nuts why I always see direct to consumer, like perfume brands, for example. And I'm like, y'all just offer a sampler, please. I cannot smell it through the computer, please. Right. Like, and so that's just really fundamental. I would love for people to, instead of being like, my offer is a discount or my offer is this urgency, go and dig into like boring old like commerce research on this, because there's so much psychology around offers specifically done by schools, business schools, all over places. There's all these theses people write about how to do bundling, how to do pricing, like all of that stuff. It's probably really interesting to the people on this call, because I know we're all like super nerds here, so we love that shit. But doing that can help you get better ideas about, well, what's a unique offer for me, right? Maybe it's like maybe there's some issue you're having in your product where people can't find, for example, if we're talking a beauty product, they can't find the right blender to work with the specific product. And you're like, well, I'll just go out and buy it and I'll offer it as gift with purchase. And I'm like, we did the research. This is the perfect blender sponge to use with this product. Like, don't go out and solve it anymore. And where did you learn that, we need to offer a sampler pack? Like, did that come from conversations, reviews? Like, how did you figure that out?
We'll look through a lot of comments, just trying to come up with ad creative ideas. And like the ones that we always just have to throw out is like, I wish you offered minis. Like, customers are kind of like telling us, like, I guess for that one it's a little bit easy, but so we just kind of know, and yeah, I mean, offer is the most powerful. Like we obviously see huge revenue in these days, but like we ran just like an evergreen. We now run evergreen gift with purchase on all of our ads, and we were able to bump average order value like 10%, for a decent amount of time. And like, no amount of creative testing or landing page testing is going to do that. You're going to look for like, small swings. It's just a bigger lever. So I think offers are just like your bigger lever. Creative and landing page tests really are just medium and small levers at a certain point. But if you really want to move the needle, you're going to see much bigger swings with an offer test.
And that's the key, right? Is like making an offer come from consumer needs instead of
Yeah.
your personal goals. Because like so
Mhm.
often you're like, I want a 2% conversion rate on this page. Then that's going to get you, that's going to send you down a path that's not necessarily what the customers want.
Mhm.
It's like how often I see bundles where the conversation about the bundle is like, this is what's efficient for us to bundle. And I'm like, yeah, but like, does
Yeah,
anybody
does
want
it even
that?
make sense? Do people want that?
Right. And I'm like,
Totally.
yeah, it looks like a good value purchase, but like nobody wants that. You're like throwing in stuff that they don't want with the product originally instead of listening to your customers and pulling it
Yeah.
back. I mean, that's fantastic stuff. All right. Any final thoughts on people here getting ready for Q4, freaking out about their business? What's the one thing that the marketers in this call, people who are running ad campaigns for their bosses,
Mhm.
should be focused on to win in Q4 in terms of metrics
Just
or
know your
anything?
just know your numbers. I mean, hopefully everyone does. Hopefully you're forecasting. Hopefully you really know, you're really clear with your leadership team or whoever it is on, here's what our numbers are. Here is what I can spend. Here's what CPI I can spend up until, really just getting clear and knowing that numbers, and hopefully adjusting those for seasonality is going to be the most important. So you can maximize your spend, or I guess minimize your damage and the slow times, and really maximize your spend in the really good times. And just having a strategy, really just being really thoughtful and strategic about what your target's going to be and how much you're going to attempt to spend during each period.
I love it. It's being level, it's being strategic, it's everyone being on the same page about what's going to happen and what could happen. I mean, it sounds fundamental, but walking that walk is much harder than I think
You
people
got to
think.
plan. It takes a lot of planning, more than I think people realize.
Yep. Cody, thank you so much for being on today. It's all the
Of
time we
course,
got.
man. Thanks for having me.
This is going to be on YouTube shortly after this, as quickly as I can upload it. And then once again, everybody join us here every week. We'll be, I don't remember who we have next week, but I'll be sharing that soon. And once again, good luck, stay strategic, follow Cody on Twitter, fantastic stuff. And buy yourself some Jones Road. It's great beauty products. My girlfriend loves it. So
Nice.
thanks everybody. And until next time.